We're going to be going over the use of a Insta-hot, in this case a Chronomite SR40 with published data up to 2 GPM in conjunction with a pressure balancing shower valve, in this case a Kohler 8304-KSL right temp, and then finally it will have a Kohler 1.5 to 1.75 shower head. And for anyone not familiar with valve handles, if the handle is in the parallel position with the piping, the valve is typically considered open, and if the valve handle is perpendicular to the piping, it is typically closed. And in the case of a supply tee, the main line, in this case the red piping, that piping is open, and the T portion, which is off to the right to the white tubing, is the valved portion. In this case it is in the open position, so the valve handle is pointed at the piping, and then in this case the valve handle is perpendicular to the piping, so the branch pipe is closed. And for the piping, the red and blue, those are PEX piping with a outside diameter of 5/8 and an inside diameter of 1/2 at 8 feet per second, which is a common max flow rate. That will provide 6 GPM, whereas the white is 3/8 inch OD with a 1/4 inch ID, and at 8 feet per second it's typically up to about 2 GPM. And before we get to the actual demonstration, wanted to go over some of the basic components and valve arrangements. First, the green hose at the bottom, that is connected up to a hose bib so you can provide water to the setup. Next is the Insta-hot, and this is piped that it can be either in the water loop or in bypass. Next we have our 1/4 inch dump lines for the hot and cold water prior to getting to the mixing valve. Then we have the bottom connection of the shower valve, which would be used if you had a tub. We are able to read the pressure of the systems on the hot water side by opening up the isolation valve on the left, or the cold water side by opening the isolation valve on the right. Obviously we have the shower head hose and connection, which has a GPM flow limiter. Our last major component is obviously the shower valve itself. We already talked about the bottom connection being if you had a tub, your top connection up to your shower head, and then the hot connection to the left and cold connection to the right. Note that valves vary, but in this particular valve, going from cold to mixed to hot is a little over 1/4 of a turn. While not present on all shower valves, many have stops with integrated checks. When the stop is in the correct position, at least with the Kohlers, the small handle is pointed toward the valve. And when the handle is pointed away from the valve, the stop is in the closed position. And with that, let's get into the demonstration. Okay, we're starting here with the water supply just off a hose bib, shut off. We've got 0 PSI in the system. This is a 0 to 100 gauge. So we're going to open up the cold water. And then you can see that we've got 60 PSI, and so the system on both sides is 60 PSI now. I'm going to close that off and just start with the cold water pressure being shown. So just going to show that we've got a nice dump flow on cold, and we end up with 25 PSI residual off a 1/4 inch tube, which is a 1/3
the volume roughly in terms of GPM as a 1/2 inch, which is what we design showers around. So we're doing this ultra conservative in showing flows through 1/4 inch tubing. And now I'm going to close that, open up the hot side, and show we've also got 25 psi on the hot side. And now we're going to show cold, residual at the shower. We've got 53. Now hot side, and this is in bypass. The Insta-hot is not in here. Hot, residual, same 53. And then we're going to show dump mixed. So I'll show both. And it's going to be with the dump valve open. This would be like you had a tub. And that's about 30 psi residual with the dump valve. So close that. Okay, so that was the Insta-hot in bypass mode. So now we're going to switch it over to putting the Insta-hot into the loop. So we'll close the bypass and we will open up the cold water supply to the Insta-hot and open up the supply to the shower valve. So our bypass is closed. So cold water flow again. We've got 60. Oh, we've got, had to get that open to read the pressure. We've got 53 again at mixed, unchanged, and at hot. This is hot through the Insta-hot. We've got about 35. And in case I didn't flip that before, I'm going to show that hot in bypass is up around 50. So back to bypass closed, hot. We've still got 30 psi residual at a full hot flow. Okay, now we're going to show when we've got the system is pressurized, we're going to close down the hot. So we've got pressure over here, but no ability to build pressure. It's just stagnant. And if I just crack the cold water, I've got plenty of flow. But as soon as I get to mixed, our pressure is going to drop off from right now being 47, 48. It's going to drop off to 0. And then when we close, the pressure doesn't build up, so the valve is still seeing 0 on the hot side. So it's going to do nothing but go into this safety mode and just dribble. But if we repressurize it, and we could do it by either method, I'll use the Insta-hot, repressurize it, now cold works again, as obviously mixed and hot do. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to go to full hot. I'm going to shut this hot off, go to full hot, and I'm going to watch this and open this valve really slowly until I just see it change. Okay, it just changed there, so I'm just barely open. So my pressure, it's not building up any pressure because it's just barely cracked. It's leaving faster than it can build up pressure. But if I close the valve, the pressure builds back up. It was kind of slow compared to full valve open. But now if I just crack this again for cold, I've got full flow because that pressure isn't being used up on the hot side. It's just sitting there stagnant. But if I hit mixed, it drops off. Closes the shower valve to safety again. When I close, pressure builds, I can get cold again. Mixed, full hot, even coming back to cold, it will not come out of safety mode until we're almost closed again. And it needs to build and mixed. So if you've got a restricted hot water side, you will get, when you turn to cold, full flow. But you will not get mixed or hot. Crack that back, not crack, open that wide open again. And we now have cold, we have mixed, and we have hot.
Now we will measure the various GPM flow rates.
I'm going to do a time to fill. I've got this bucket marked with 1 gallon, half 1 gallon up through 5 gallon that I measured out. So I'm just going to measure here and see how long it takes for the cold in bypass mode, meaning a full dump from here, through this 1/4 inch tubing. So that's basically a third the flow of what 1/2 inch will do, which is what we design showers around, is 1/2 inch. So this is even a terrible case against what pipe sizes can do, keeping in mind that the shower is usually around 1.5 to 1.8 GPM. So get my timer ready here. And we're going to hit start and fill. And that took, confirm, yep, that took 11 seconds. So at 10 seconds, that would be 6 GPM. So we're just barely under 6 GPM for cold flow. I'm going to dump that. I'm going to move this over to the hot flow. Reset. And that was 30 seconds. And at 30 seconds, that's 2 GPM of straight hot. I'm going to dump that. And that was in through the Insta-hot. So let's shut off the Insta-hot and do that hot water dump again. Reset. That was 13 seconds, so about that 5 GPM, really close to the cold. I may be an off a fraction of a second on either, so I would say cold and hot. Full flow was coming in at the same rate. So now let's reset that and go back to, actually we just want cold water flow. Get my Velcro that's keeping this in place out of the way. We are bypass closed and doesn't matter where the bypass closed. Hot water. We're going to do first the cold water on the shower. Just going to set that in there, and that was 36 seconds. So that would be 1.7, 1.75. 1.7 is 35 seconds, and 1.5 is 40 seconds. So right at that 1.5 to 1.75 rating that the shower head is rated for. So that's spot on. I'm going to reset, and I'm going to open this to full hot, and let's start with the bypass open, Insta-hot closed, and I'm going to do full hot. Again, I'm going to set that in there so I can start these at the same time, and I'm going to go full open. So that is hot only. I'm fully open on the shower valve. And that was 35 seconds. So again, right at that 1.7, 1.75 GPM. Now I'm going to go and open up the Insta-hot, close the bypass, and I'm going to go full hot to full hot through the Insta-hot. And that was 37 and a half, 38 seconds. So I would put that at about 1.6, about 1.6 GPM. So maybe it dropped off 0.05 GPM going through the Insta-hot. So technically there's a loss, but that's not to be unexpected. It would be a loss through any additional piping. But again, we're also running through 1/4 inch tubing, which has 1/3 of the volume as 1/2 inch tubing, which is what the plans call for. So there you go.